the September meeting of the Zoning Hearing Board. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We're a somewhat reduced board this evening, but we do have a quorum, so we can conduct business and will do so. Beginning with appeal number 3089, the owner applicant, property located at 471 Barclay Road, requests an extension of time for obtaining a permit under section 280-144 of the code for an additional 6 months to March 23rd, 2022. Is the applicant here? Norma, if you would.
Correct, I do. Matthew, with 2 T's, Frey, F-R-E-Y. I'll take it off.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Why are we here this evening?
We're here this evening because we're in the process of trying to sell our property. We've moved out of it, and we are seeking an extension of the variance that was granted 6 months ago through March 22nd of 22, I think, March 23rd of 2022. It makes it more attractive for a potential buyer to have that variance in place so that they could put a new house on it if they so choose.
Okay, I'm a little confused, and I don't recall the facts of the case when you were before us. Are you currently residing at the location?
No, we moved out. We had a deal in place with a builder who was here, and actually they were the ones who were seeking the variance, seeking and obtained the variance back in 6 months ago. They subsequently, that deal fell through, and we have it. We had another deal with another set of people. They were the ones that actually scheduled this hearing, but they have since pulled out. So we're trying to keep the variance extension alive so that whatever value is in that as something being attractive to somebody who is seeking to purchase the property, that we have it.
While I'm sympathetic to the situation, typically, financial convenience of applicants is not always a compelling reason, but I'd ask members of the board whether there are any questions about the request for the extension.
No.
It's the first extension.
First extension.
Okay. And are you looking to continue with the project, or are you just, in essence, looking now to sell the property with the variance attached to it?
The latter.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions from the board, are there any comments from the public on this request? Seeing none, I would propose that we grant the applicant a single extension of the time for obtaining a permit under 280-144 until March 23rd, 2022. Is there a second? Any board discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Ms. Foreman?
Aye.
Mr. Weitzman?
Aye.
Mr. Lord? Aye. And I vote affirmatively as well, so that's 4-0 for a single extension of the permit until March 23rd, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Appeal number 3090, the applicant Radnor Rockwell LLC, property located at 1001 Eagle Road and zoned PI planned institutional. The applicant seeks a special exception from section 280-68B to redevelop the subject property with a home for the aged and life care residents. Mr. Brosman, good evening. What can we do for you?
Good evening. I'm George Brosman, representing the applicant. We had been before the board, I think before the summer started, and we had asked for a continuance of this application until September 16th, and that meeting was rescheduled to tonight. At that time, I told you that the reason for the continuance was that my client was meeting with some community members in the area, and we wanted to take some time to do that. That occurred, and my clients, based on the feedback they got, they developed an alternate plan. And over the summer, on July 30th, I filed that plan with the township, an alternate special exception application. And I had written a continuance request on this appeal number 3090, the first application. I wrote a letter to you on September 1st requesting a second continuance of that, advising you that we plan to proceed at this time with that application we filed over the summer. In that letter, I told you that we were going to go to the Planning Commission on September 14th about that second application, and then we hope to come to the Zoning Board in October. We did go to the Planning Commission on September 14th, and we're prepared to come in October with that application that we believe was preferable. So I'm seeking a continuance of this application the second time to allow us to proceed with that first application.
I've got to ask the obvious question, which is if there is a plan that you intend to go forward with, why would you simply not withdraw the application in this matter?
We could withdraw the application. We prefer not to. We'd prefer to see if we make traction with the second one, and if we get that approved, we would withdraw the first one. But if it became a real sticking point, you know, I could do that, but we preferred not to at this time.
Any questions from the board on this request?
I have a question. Was notice served for tonight's meeting for the second extension?
I did send out the notice for this hearing. I didn't want to be presumptuous that a continuance would be granted. The township has a policy that you can't put anything else in the notice letter. So as a courtesy to the neighbors, I wrote a letter to all the people that got the notice saying that I was coming to request a continuance. I said I didn't know if it would be granted, but so yes, the notice was sent for the hearing, and then I wrote them a second letter in my own envelope with a different postage saying I was going to be asking for this continuance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any comments from members of the public on this request? Seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, Kevin, just point of clarification. I'm hearing tonight that the amended application is a whole new submittal, and we're a continuance on the first one, the second application, because it administratively makes a difference for how we're processing things.
My understanding is that there is a second plan that has been filed. Presumably, it will have a different appeal number. So we are proceeding this evening with respect to the earlier filed application, which is, as our solicitor pointed out to me the other day, this is sort of like pleading in the alternative. We've got simultaneous applications in front of us, but this one is the earlier filed application. And then to the extent a timely filing has been made of an application for the October meeting, then we can
Understood. Thank you.
get that. Okay. Sorry for the procedural stuff for the folks here. I would move that we grant the request for a continuance that has been requested by the applicant in this matter. Is there a second? Any board discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Ms. Foreman?
Aye.
Mr. Weitzman?
Aye.
Mr. Lord? Aye. Mr. John Nagel? And I'm in favor as well. That's 5-0. Norma, thank you. Mr. Brosman, I suspect we'll be seeing you again.
I hope so. Thank you and good night.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on, appeal number 3105, the applicant David and Jennifer Fox, the property located at 207 Ravenscliff Road and zoned ACDM Agricultural Conservancy Density Modification. The applicant seeks a variance from section 280-112 of the code to disturb areas of steep slopes to construct a swimming pool, spa, and patio. The proposed improvements cannot be constructed without disturbing certain areas of steep slopes. Council, good evening.
Jamie Junn here on behalf of the applicants. Jamie, last name Jun.
Good evening, Ms. Junn. What do we have in front of us here?
Good evening. As you've just mentioned, we are seeking a variance to disturb steep slopes at the property, which is 207 Ravenscliff Road. The proposed improvements are a swimming pool, spa, patio, and related improvements. The steep slopes at issue were likely created when the existing house was constructed, but unfortunately, we were not able to find a grading permit plan that would show that the grading was done at that time, and therefore this application is necessary. We have two witnesses tonight, but before the witnesses come up, I just wanted to briefly go through the exhibit package. There's a total of 10 exhibits. The first exhibit is an aerial that shows the property, shows the existing single-family home, and the nearby residences. Exhibit A2 is the grading permit plans. The first sheet, again, shows the existing improvements. It shows the areas of steep slopes that are on site. Second sheet of that shows the proposed improvements in color. And the rest are sort of self-explanatory, more details. Exhibit A3 shows the various views of the home. I won't go through all of them. They were included with our application package, but it shows the various elevations of the home, and you can see sort of the sloping that's on the property. The last two sheets of that exhibit are the adjacent neighboring homes. Exhibit A4 is a memorandum that has been prepared by the project engineers firm. It describes the areas to be disturbed, the reasons for the disturbance, and that'll be further testified to with our civil engineer's testimony. Exhibit A5 is a post-construction stormwater management report for the property, and it basically explains why the stormwater facilities need to be where they are located, and a lot of the disturbance is related to the stormwater management for the site. Exhibit A6 and A7 are prior plans that deal with this property that show the existing grades at different time, and it kind of it corroborates our belief that the grades were, these slopes were created at the time of construction of the home. Exhibit A8 is the HOA's approval of the proposed improvements. It also shows the list of neighbors that had received, I guess, notice of the proposed improvements, and the third sheet is a tax map that basically shows where those neighbors are located. Exhibit A9 is the CV of our civil engineer. Exhibit A10 kind of clarifies the areas to be impacted, and they'll be again reviewed through the testimony of the civil engineer.
Ms. Junn, if I could suggest one other exhibit for your package.
Yes.
Which was contained in the original application. You need to enter a deed. So,
And I have a copy here, so I can mark that as Exhibit A11.
Thank you.
And who should that be handed to, Kevin?
Sorry, thank you for that. Please proceed.
My first witness is David Fox, one of the applicants.
Norma?
I do. David Fox, F-O-X.
Can you please tell the board how long you have resided at the property?
For just over a year, we purchased the house in August of last year and moved in September of last year.
And what improvements
I'm
are you...
sorry. It'll be easier. Why don't you take the mic?
Sorry, I didn't realize what you were pointing at me. I thought it was a clicker.
Through the course of the evening, I make random movements, so don't.
Very good.
And I've already covered it briefly, but what improvements are being proposed for your property?
So a pool, a spa, fireplace, and the associated patios that would go around it. In addition, there's some deficiencies in the yard. There's some sloping that makes it kind of unusable for what most people would use it for activities, to throw a ball, kick a ball, those kinds of things, as well as our downspouts just empty into the yard right now, so it makes it a little unusable once it rains.
Have you spoken to your neighbors about the proposed improvements?
Yes, I have. So part of the HOA's rules is we need to notify all our neighbors of what we're planning on doing. So that notice consisted of not just saying this is what we want to do, but the plans from Armand Pools, who are the folks who are designing the pool for us. So they were able to see the full layout of the pool, how it was situated on the property, what the materials would be like, all of those things, so they could really understand how it would sit on the property and how they might view it or not view it from their adjacent properties. So we sent that out to those neighbors, got nothing but positive feedback or none. We sent that to the HOA and got back the approval from the HOA. So that was the first instance of us notifying our neighbors. The second time was when we sent out the letter pursuant to this variance and notifying everyone. That would be the second time. We received no negative feedback, a question or two of just, hey, what are you guys doing? And so we explained. And then took it upon ourselves, also let the HOA know that this was happening. They appreciated that. And then also took it upon ourselves just to send out a letter after they received the variance. We dropped one in everyone's mailbox that just said, hey folks, this is what we're doing. Here's what we're, not only inviting, but encouraging them to ask any questions they might have. Got no negative feedback, thumbs up, hope you get the variance, you improve your property, all our values go up, those kinds of things. So it was nothing but smiles.
And those are all of my questions for Mr. Fox.
Okay, any questions from the board? I have one question. Assuming the board was inclined to grant the relief this evening, when can you get in the ground?
So it's somewhat of our choice. There's concerns about just the timing of materials and labor and all those things. We had asked Armand to hold off until perhaps March, so we would be the first in next year, so that we could avoid, one of our concerns, we have dogs, and so if we tear up the yard now, we're not going to get grass and seed in time before the seasons change, and then therefore I'm just going to have a mud pit in the backyard, and that's going to be heck on the house. So we had asked to be first in line in March. They were waiting to see the result of this before we all kind of nailed it down.
Okay, I asked that question because, your council might want to schedule the extension request if we do grant the variance, sooner rather than later, because you've got a limited amount of time. Kevin?
Well, in with March, if they were to submit the building permits shortly thereafter and have the permits issued, I think that meets the ordinance requirements to have the building issued, and then there's another at least 6-month window for them to start on permits before those would expire.
Okay, good. All right. Just something to keep in mind in
Thank you.
in the event that relief is granted.
Understood.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
My next witness is Tammy Ray Barr from Cairns and Associates, the civil engineer.
I do.
And say your full name, please.
Leslie M. Barr Jr., and I go by Tammy Ray. Last name is Barr, B-A-R-R.
Can you please state your occupation and position with Cairns and Associates?
Senior civil engineer.
And we have submitted your CV as one of the exhibits. If you can please describe briefly for the board your professional and educational background.
I have a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University College of Engineering, class of '89, and I was licensed in 2000, having followed my protege to tell me to wait for 10 years because in 5 years you're really not qualified to talk about much.
Are you familiar with the property?
I am.
And why have you been engaged by the applicants?
The applicant seeks to build a pool, therefore you need a grading permit, and we were brought on board to assess the impervious surfaces, do the land survey, and then the design there too.
And can you describe the existing improvements and the site conditions?
The existing improvements currently in concern of a driveway and a house, small patio area with some flagstone, some boulder walls, and grass and sloping yard.
And in your professional opinion, how and when were the steep slopes that currently exist created?
There's no way to really tell when things were created, but they do exist, and they are not uncommon to construction of a home, basement, foundations, and such, where you would pile things nearby and then grade them out. So it's likely related to the home construction itself.
And we have submitted as our exhibits the original subdivision plan, which shows contours for the lot,
Correct.
as well as a subsequent grading permit plan. And can you kind of explain how that shows, or how that supports your belief that the steep slopes were created?
So the plans are not overly detailed that we have of the area. So we're going by the generality of the contours, where they do seem to be fairly smooth, and the entire area has been more or less terraformed for creation of roadways and homes. So we believe most of the area has been disturbed at some point in time in construction of the original subdivision.
And we are referring to Exhibit A6 and Exhibit A7. And can you describe specifically what areas of the steep slopes are proposed to be disturbed and why? And there is an exhibit, A10, which is a zoning exhibit, which we can refer to as you explain that.
Correct.
The areas.
So the areas that we're talking about, I
Okay,
have listed as areas 1 through 7 on our plan. They were denoted as 1 through 6 in the memo that Patrick Hanlon had provided. Yep, there we go.
Thank you.
So, consistent with the previously submitted memo, well, it was okay for them, no? Okay. Area 1 is in the back of the property, close to where the pool equipment pad would be. Then we have Area 2, which is close to the flagstone patio, going between the patio and the proposed patio. Area 3 being in the right corner of the home. Area 4 being an area related to trenching for downspout gutters to be connected to the storm sewer system. Area 5 near the stormwater basin, because we again are trenching and we have to have access to the basin for excavation and piling of soils and putting things back in the ground. And then we have Area 6, which is for utility connections on the eastern side of the home. And then we have Area 7, which was not discussed in Patrick's memo because he didn't zoom in and look at it close enough. But indeed, by the grading that we're doing related to the fireplace and such, there is a touch of grading that's going to go into the steep slope on that one side. So that gives us 7 small areas.
And for the most part, and there are square footage calculations in the memorandum that kind of describe what areas to be disturbed. But for the most part, the steep slopes that are proposed to be disturbed near the front of the home, which would be Area 4, which is the larger area, Area 5, Area 3, those are related to the stormwater management facilities, correct?
That is correct.
And for the most part, the proposed improvements will be underground?
That's correct. And the ground will be restored afterwards for slope.
Right. So as Tammy Ray has just stated, once those improvements are made underground, the existing site conditions will basically be returned post-construction. Can the proposed improvements be constructed without disturbance to these steep slopes?
No, the plan as it sits has to be constructed this way. There's not really another way to really build it. The permeable surfaces for the stormwater bed were tested, and the bed works in that location, so we have to be there with the stormwater system. That you have to have a way of conveying water out of it. You have to bring the downspouts to it, so there's really no other way to get to it without disturbing steep slopes. And we would not want to put the bed in the steep slope area, so we're trying to minimize what we're impacting.
Okay, so we are referencing Exhibit A5, which is the post-construction stormwater management report that basically says the stormwater facilities need to be to the front of the home, correct?
Correct.
And the other small areas, minor areas to the rear, they're sort of driven by the siting of the house and the existing site conditions and the proposed improvements, correct?
That is correct.
Are the size, scope, extent, and character of the request consistent with the comprehensive plan and promote the harmonious and orderly development of the ACDM Agricultural Conservancy Density Modification District?
In my opinion, they do.
Will the proposed addition be appropriate and consistent with the character and type of development in the surrounding area?
It will.
And if you notice aerial A1, there are a lot of homes in this area that have similar improvements. They do have swimming pools on their lots. Does the proposed addition have any adverse impact on the safety, health, morals, or general welfare of the township?
It does not.
Okay. Those are all of my questions for Tammy Ray.
Questions from members of the board?
Out of curiosity, it piqued my interest when I noticed the difference in percolation rates behind the house and in front of the house. Do you have any insight into that?
As far as the soils are concerned,
Yeah.
we generally go with the best results we can, but we try to stay away from foundations and pools and
I
such.
understand all that. I was just wondering the character of the soil. Was that because of the cut and fill when they developed the property?
It could be. I can only really look at the results because I didn't inspect the hole myself. We had a third party do that.
Right. And just to reiterate, all the areas in front will be returned to the pre-construction grades?
Yes, we're not changing any of the grading in the front yard. We're just going to cut through, put the utilities in, and restore the grades to where they are.
And in the backyard, where the pool's located, did you look at different sizes or different orientations that would preclude having to cut back there?
Different sizes, yes. We did actually sit down with Ormond Pools in the beginning of the job and trying to achieve something of a normal size for the community. The pool really was, the design seemed to be logical for what we were doing, and that would necessitate grading. If we were to pull it back and make it smaller or change the shape of it, we'd still wind up impacting the slopes and having to do more disturbance of steep slope areas than we have currently shown.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions?
Okay. The stormwater management that appears on the plans that's going to be installed, is that the purpose of that is just to serve the additional runoff that's going to be created by the additional impervious, or is that going to actually improve the overall stormwater management on this property?
It's going to improve the overall, because what we're doing is offsetting the new impervious surface by taking the downspouts, which are currently making the muddy areas. So being that those areas are just running off and into the lawn and then down the hills, that water will be directly put underground, which is the cleanest water we can grab because it's coming off the roof because you have the least amount of contaminants. The water that would hit the surface of the pool area would run across the grass, get filtered through the lawn, and eventually work its way to the storm sewer system. So we'd have an improvement in water quality, and we'll also have a diminishment of runoff rate and volume.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So that is the bulk of our testimony. And again, I know that it appears like there are a lot of areas, but a lot of that will be restored post-construction, and we believe that this is a reasonable, proposed improvement for that property.
Okay, would you like to move your exhibits?
Yes. I would move for exhibits A1 through A11 to be moved into the record.
Without objection. Is there any public comment on this application? Okay, seeing none. I would move that the request of the applicant for relief from section 280-112 of the code in accordance with the plans and testimony that have been provided here this evening be granted. Is there a second? Board discussion? I'll call the vote. Ms. Foreman?
Aye.
Mr. Weitzman?
Aye.
Mr. Lord?
Aye.
Mr. John Nagel? I'm in favor as well. It's 5-0, Norma. Thank you. And council, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, for appeal number 3106, Mr. Weitzman will be recusing himself from consideration of this matter. He will go tour some fascinating sports memorabilia in the lobby while we proceed with the rest of the hearing. This is appeal number 3106. The applicant, Allison Moraka and Lee Satinoff, property located at 419 Oak Lane and zoned R2 residential. The property is legally non-conforming as to the lot area requirement. Applicant seeks a variance and/or a de minimis variance from section 280-208 of the code to construct an addition to the rear of the home, which will increase the building area by 217 square feet and exceed the required building area requirement by 1.7%. Applicant also requests such other relief as may be necessary, consistent with the exhibits and testimony presented at the hearing. Good evening, Mr. Cornelia.
Good evening. Nick Cornelia representing the applicant on this matter. Good to see you live. This is a situation where it's an existing building. It was built in the 19th century, or the 18th century, I should say. Well, 19th century. The lot is non-conforming. It's about 2/3 of the lot size requirement of 20,000 feet in this zoning district. It is already existing nonconformity as to building coverage. Actually, it complies with the impervious coverage requirement and will continue to comply with the with the impervious coverage requirement. What the applicant is proposing is actually building part of the house on the deck. There would be no increased building coverage outside of what exists already on the deck. Interestingly, in our code, a deck is not a building. It is impervious coverage, but it's not a building. Hence, since we are enclosing the deck, we do need a slight variance on the building coverage requirement, even though we're not increasing and actually decreasing the impervious coverage requirement when the construction would be completed. Also, back in 1999, a prior owner actually got relief for a variance on building coverage, which exceeds what we're asking for. He only built a portion of that and actually further reduced what was already an existing building coverage. So what we're asking for here is relatively de minimis. I would ask that the witnesses be sworn in. I have Mr. Satinoff and Ms. Moraka, his spouse, as well as Cam Lacey, the architect, is seated in the back there in case any questions need to be asked.
Allison Moraka, Moraca.
Lee Satnoff, Satanoff, as in Frank.
And Lee, I think we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Are you the owner of 419 Oak Lane?
I am half of the owner.
Okay, you own it with your wife.
Yes.
And who else resides there with you?
Our 2 children.
Okay, and I've attached as Exhibit A2 the deed to the property. And is this the deed to the property? You acquired the property in May of 2020?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. And also I've attached as an exhibit that the board should have, Exhibit A3. And is this an aerial view of your block of Oak Lane?
That is correct, yes.
And it shows Oak Lane. It says 419 Oak Lane, which is your property.
Yes.
And is your proposal to add an addition to the rear of your home?
It's to square off the back of our house, correct.
All right. And would this addition only cover the existing deck of the property?
Yes.
And And as you mentioned, you're squaring off the rear of the property?
Correct.
And will you be increasing impervious coverage at all?
No, we're actually going to be reducing.
Okay, and the only relief you're asking for here is the building coverage requirement.
That's correct, yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as A4. And can you tell the board what A4 represents?
That's the Delaware County lot lines that are listed for each property on Oak Lane.
And it indicates that your property is actually the smallest property on Oak Lane?
That is correct, yes.
And actually looks like it's the smallest property is when you consider the road behind you as well, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And also attached to A4, there's other items from the Delaware County website. And can you tell the board what those other attachments indicate?
The property details and description of our lots and the lots of everybody on Oak Lane.
So actually, it shows the size of the other lots, and again, shows that your lot is the smallest lot on the block. Is that
Correct,
right?
yes.
Now I'm going to show you the site plan, which has been marked as A5, as prepared by Mr. Lacy. And in particular, if you can reference the site plan, the proposed site plan, and tell the board what you are proposing and what that site plan represents.
So currently, the dotted lines are
The
in the
dotted,
middle.
are you talking about the dotted red lines? Is that what you're referencing?
The dotted red line, that's currently an existing sunroom. And to the left of that is an existing deck. And to the right as well, there is an existing deck as well.
And as you mentioned, you're squaring off the rear of your home?
Yes, so the rear of the home will come to the line here that I'm pointing to all the way across and then back up.
And also in the zoning information sheet, it shows in the R2 zoning district that the required lot size is 20,000 square feet, and your lot size is 13,500 square feet.
Correct.
Also, as we note, the property is non-conforming as to your side yard setback, and you're just extending that.
That's correct, yes.
Are you again, the plan indicates that you are decreasing the impervious coverage from 36.3% to 34.7%. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And you're increasing the building coverage from what currently exists at 18.2% to 19.7%.
Correct.
Is that right? Also marked as an exhibit as A9 is appeal number 2384. Is that the appeal that I referenced in opening regarding the previous variance requested?
That is correct, yes.
And in that appeal and the plan that's attached, actually the building coverage prior to the construction of that plan was 19.7%. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And it was being proposed to increase that to 19.9%,
Correct.
but he never fully built that out.
Correct.
And that's where we come up. The current is 18.2%.
Correct.
All right, thanks. I'm going to show you some photographs. First, I'll show you what's been marked as A6. And can you tell the board what A6 represents?
A6 is the frontage of our existing lot with our house on it.
And A7?
Is the back lot, picture of the lot with our house on it.
And that A7, it shows the decks that you're enclosing, correct?
Yes, correct.
And are you extending anything beyond what is currently shown as building or deck on that plan?
No.
A8, that just shows your side yard.
Correct.
And as we mentioned, A9 previously, which is the appeal of Craig Snyder from, I believe it was 1999.
Yes.
All right. And then A10, actually another prior owner from whom you had purchased asked for relief to attach the building, to build an addition where the building would be attached to the garage.
Correct.
And that was turned down by this board.
That is correct, yes.
I'm going to show you also, have you proceeded to the HARB for this application?
We have.
And did you receive approval?
Yes, we have.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as A11, and just the certificate of appropriateness from the Historical and Architectural Review Board.
Correct, yes.
I'll hand that up.
So that's not part of the package that was submitted earlier?
That was not, John.
Okay, thank you.
And then I've also marked as A12, and these were some elevations prepared by Cam, and I'll ask you to describe them, and I'll hand those up to the board as well. So if you want to...
This is an illustration of what the back would look like after renovation. Again, existing over both decks, but not proceeding past that lot line.
And then also that second page is the west elevation, and if you can just tell the board.
So this is our side west elevation. You can see it's just extending back. This is also, I believe this is our driveway side as well.
Okay, and not to forget Allison.
Yes.
Allison, tell us why you're proposing this addition to the house.
Like most families, we gravitate towards our kitchen, holidays, parties, entertaining, family dinners, neighborhood kids just coming over for a snack. You know, we would like a larger island. Right now, we have a very narrow kitchen, so we want to use the space that we have in our sunroom just for everyday living, for the function of entertaining and having people over. Our yard is actually a passageway from Woodland Ave to Oak Lane. Like, us and our neighbors, we're very friendly with them and their kids. Our kids are 8 and 7 right now, and there's a gate passageway, and pretty much our yard's kind of like the common ground that everyone lands at to stay off Eagle, and they're always in our house, and we just want a bigger space to, make memories.
Have you spoken to your neighbors about this proposal?
We have. We've gotten encouraging feedback. One says, anything you do is going to look beautiful. Good luck. Just all positive feedback, or none at all, no questions. Just, keep us posted. Or.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Are there questions from the board for the applicants?
Actually, it's a clarification. So, obviously, I noticed that the coverage goes up by 1.7, but the impervious goes down. Is that by removing, just so I'm clear on this, the existing flagstone terrace and a little bit of the driveway? Is that how that's achieved?
Correct.
I'll bring... Cam actually prepared the plan, and Norma, I guess we'll have to swear him in.
Yes. It's Cam, C-A-M, Lacey, L-A-C-Y.
Cam, you're a registered Pennsylvania architect.
Correct.
And you prepared what's been marked as A5?
Yes.
And Mr. Lord had asked a question regarding the reduction in impervious coverage. Could you explain how it's being reduced?
There are three things that reduce. The deck that exists now, we're not going as far out as that, so when we take it off, we're not putting back as much. We're taking off a flagstone terrace, and then we're taking a piece of driveway. And those things combined, removals, end up being the net effect that it's less.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I would ask that the exhibits be made part of the record, please.
Without objection. Is there any comment from members of the public regarding this application? Seeing none, I would move, well, we've been asked one of two choices. I would move that the applicant be granted a de minimis variance for purposes of constructing the improvements as set forth in the application and the testimony, application exhibits, and the testimony presented this evening. Is there a second? Second. Any board discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Ms. Foreman?
Aye.
Mr. Lord?
Aye.
Mr. John Nagel? I'm in favor as well. That's 4-0. Good luck with the project. Hope you can get in the ground. It's a tough time to be building. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, we will allow Mr. Weitzman a brief time to make a graceful return to the dais. Okay, the last matter is Appeal 3107. The applicant, Sarah Mann, property located at 459 Sproul Road and zoned R1 residential. This is a very long notice, Norma, so I'm going to shorten it. The property is surrounded by commercial and other non-residential uses, as well as Interstate 476. Pursuant to a variance from this board received in 2008, the property is currently used as a Montessori school. The applicant proposes to use the building as chiropractic offices. The applicant requests a variance from Section 280-14 of the code to convert the use of the property to chiropractic offices, or a special exception under Section 280-101A1 for a conversion from one nonconforming use to another nonconforming use. I didn't shorten it, sorry. Applicant also requests such other relief consistent with the exhibits and testimony presented at the zoning hearing. Mr. Cornelia.
Thank you, Mr. Ellie. I had sent to the board a request for a continuance on this matter. I had also mailed a check for $200 payable to Township for this. We are in the process of obtaining an up-to-date survey. And so the survey that was in the file was outdated, so we're trying to get an up-to-date survey that is being performed, and we will have that in time for next month's meeting. And actually, I'll submit that to the Township as soon as I receive it so that you have it ahead of time. And so for that reason, that we were requesting continuance to the October meeting list.
Great. Any questions from the board on this? Is there any comment from the public on this request? Hearing none, I would move that the the continuance be granted for this matter until the October 21st meeting. Is there a second? Thank you. Ms. Foreman?
Aye.
Mr. Lord? Aye. Mr. John Nagel? I'm in favor as well. Continuance is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
There being no further business coming before the board, we are adjourned until our October meeting. Thank you.